G'day, we're doing a quick video today about cooling systems. This is an 05 Ram 3500 with the 5.9 high output common rail Cummins inline 6 turbo diesel. And recently this vehicle's done about 220,000 Ks now, I think, kilometers that is. And by many accounts, somewhere around 200,000, from anywhere from 150 actually, you can possibly expect to have your water pump fail. So it has been a task of mine for some time to get around to doing a preemptive strike on the water pump, and haven't got around to it. Had the parts here to do it. And then recently I've noticed a little bit more play than I would like in the fan clutch. So this is your fan in here. When you turn it, you can soon push against it and see how much resistance there is on it. If it's going to spin freely, you'll know your fan clutch is going bad. So I thought, well, there might be a reason to have a crack at this. And what I discovered is a pretty easy way. If you want to do what I did and do a preemptive strike on your cooling system, doing it all at once has some really big advantages. If you have a look at some other videos on changing over your water pump, you can get the water pump out without taking the fan and the fan clutch out of the vehicle. You have to rotate it around. It's tricky. There's at least two, or let's say 1.5, at least 1.5, because there are some commonalities, but basically two different ways of getting it out with the fan in place. But it's really not that big of a deal to get the fan out, although I will detail some difficulties I did have getting it out with this little operation. But regardless, it makes it super easy to replace everything: your tensioner, your thermostat, your water pump, your serpentine belt, everything, all in one go if you take that fan clutch and the fan out. So if you just want to take this as a scheduled service, so for example, many vehicles will say, oh, you get to 150,000 Ks, do your timing belt. Is your timing belt busted? No. Is it worn? More than likely. But you want to replace that timing belt before it snaps, and then potentially, depending on your engine, takes your engine out. Or if you've got a free spinning engine, you might not. But anyway, timing belt snaps and you might find out you bin your engine. So you have that scheduled service to make sure you do it. And then other vehicles may have things like injector lines. The Toyota Land Cruiser, for example, in the 100 series has a requirement to do your injector lines at 150,000 Ks, because Toyota determined if it's an off-road vehicle and you've got that little bit of movement in those injector lines over time, that can lead to leaks. And with a common rail engine, those injector lines are under super high pressure and you do not want them leaking. But anyway, that's off the topic of today. But there's no official service schedule to change out your water pump. What most people would do is their water pump would go, or there's a weep hole in it. They would see it weeping, right, better change the oil, the water pump, or their car starts to get hotter and they go, oh, maybe the water pump's on the way out. I don't particularly want a situation I have had in vehicles past where the water pump's let go and you're towing your vehicle home. And the prices in parts to put a new water pump, tensioner, belt, everything on the vehicle, and I know it's right, is a far less expensive, cheap insurance really for a potential tow truck ride home if I either snap my belt, the water pump lets go, or I'm towing something and my fan clutch completely lets go. So you take that as you will, but it would be a good thing to think about if you've got a car, a Ram in this case, that's done similar mileage, getting up 200 and above, and you're on the original water pump, might be worthwhile thinking about changing it over, particularly if it's never been done before. So what you do, what I did is I thought I'll do the complete cooling system effectively all at once. So what you do, and there's some good videos online to show you how to do this, but they show you it in parts and don't pull it all together. So you might need to watch a couple of videos. The fan shroud here, this is your fan shroud. It's quite a neat little design. It's collapsible. And there's 4 bolts that hold it in. There's 2 at the top here, and then there's 2 underneath. You take those bolts out, and then you can compress it. And then from underneath, you can compress it and wiggle it up between the radiator. Watch your radiator fins. Don't go bending your radiator fins. And don't go putting too much pressure on your fan, because these are 15-year-old vehicles now. The fan is almost certainly more brittle than what it was when it first came out. So you don't want to bust your fan and have an unnecessary expense of replacing your fan. So compress it, wiggle it out the top, and then I got it out just by coming up the top, compressing, moving it up, getting back underneath, pushing it up, and got it out without much difficulty at all. Getting it back in is the reverse, and I found getting it back in was heaps easier than getting it out. Although getting it out wasn't a massive problem, but it was easier getting it out than getting it in. So once you've done that, you take that out, and then you can remove your fan clutch. You're going to need a really big shifter to get it out, 36 millimeters, not shifter, sorry, a spanner, and a fan clutch removal tool. Although a few people have said that they've had success just with their 36 mil spanner and putting pressure on the serpentine belt, just leaning on the serpentine belt and then getting a mallet and whacking it and getting it to break. We couldn't get it to do that. Every bolt, fuel injector line, everything that's been under this bonnet that I've had to work on or replace since I've owned this truck has been really easy to undo. Easy. Where a potential video says, oh, you want to be careful about this. This nut can be really hard to get off. It can seize up, it can rust, it can corrode, and it can be really hard to get off. I've had no issues. This vehicle has been shedded for its whole life. And I've shedded it in my life. It's been well looked after. There's no corrosion in the engine bay or underneath it or in the chassis, anywhere. So I was not expecting this to be a difficult job, but we could not get that blasted nut to crack. So everything we watched is people just put a big spanner on it and either had held it with the clutch removal tool, whacked it with a spanner, and they got it off. But we could not get that to work. It just would not go for us, which was so bleeding annoying, but is what it is. So initially, this is what we use. This is a Sid Chrome 36 millimeter spanner, and we just put that on the fan clutch hub, put some pressure on the serpentine belt, and tried to whack it with a hammer to get it to, or with a mallet to get it to crack. Would not crack. So then when we put the fan clutch removal tool on it to hold the hub in place, then there wasn't enough room between the hub and the fan to get this thick spanner in there. So we had to use a proper fan clutch removal tool. This is from Toledo. And then try to crack it like that. So just held it and just tried to pull on it. And we bent this. We bent the jaws open so we couldn't turn it anymore. So that didn't work. So that's how tight it was. It just would not come on. I tried to tighten these up, whack it with a mallet. We just could not keep it in there. The jaws would just flex. We had so much tension on it trying to get it to crack. How we eventually did it was we got a ratchet strap and we went above the fan clutch hub and tied it down as tight as we possibly could to the chassis rails and cross members underneath the ram, tightened it up as far as we could, and then we got the spanner on it and we eventually got it to crack. But man, was that thing tight. I was astonished at how tight it was and how much work it took to get that off. After we got the fan clutch out, it was very, very easy after that. So there's 2 bolts holding your water pump in. Take those 2 bolts off, get the top of it, give it a little bit of a tap with a block of wood or something. It'll pop straight out. Put a new seal on it, bam it in. Easy, no problems at all. To get the belt, well, before you do that, you've got to take the serpentine belt off. Just get a breaker bar, and there's a slot in there for your ratchet breaker bar. Just chuck it in there, and then just pull on it, and it'll loosen the belt off. Slip the belt off, no problems. And then 1 center bolt on your belt tensioner takes the belt tensioner off. 2 bolts in the water pump takes that off. Your thermostat's in here at the top of your radiator hose. There's 3 bolts there. Take that out, put the new thermostat in. We drained the coolant at the same time and replaced the coolant. And then to put it all back together again, it's the reverse. So belt tensioner, put that on. 1 bolt holds that in place. 2 bolts hold the water pump place. Don't forget to replace your seal on a new water pump. The water pump I bought a Gates water pump, and it didn't come with a seal, so I had to buy a seal separate. Just be aware of that. Just check that it comes with your seal. So put that on, no worries there. And then new Serpentine belt, weave that through, which was so much easier without that fan and fan shroud on. I wouldn't, you could do it without with the fan on and the fan shroud, but it was just infinitely easier without that fan in place. It's really simple, just slot it in. You could do it one person, no problems at all. And then you just leave your tension till last, pull the tension on, slip it over the tensioner, let it go. Belt's all lined up, easy to check it, easy to see that it's running through, easy to make sure you've got your pattern correct and nothing, the belt's sitting true on all your pulleys. Really, really simple. If it wasn't for getting that blasted fan clutch out, this would have been a really, really easy job. That was the hardest part of it. And the speed with which we were able to do that with no busted knuckles and scrape, no skin off, I think was well worth taking that fan clutch and the fan shroud off. So then you just undo the bolts on the fan, take the fan off, bolt the fan to your new fan clutch, and then drop that in, spin it on, compress your fan shroud, drop back in, 4 bolts hold that in place. At the bottom of your fan clutch, it's an electronic fan clutch. So there's a cable off the bottom, and the cable has a bracket that sits into the fan shroud at the bottom. I found that a little difficult to get back in again, but just slot it in and push it into place, and it's held there, and then it bolts into place. There's a mount on the other side of the radiator at the bottom where it bolts into place, which holds it, which means the fan can spin, the electronic wire comes out of the fan clutch, and the fan won't eat the wiring. So make sure you get that bolt in, make sure you run that in the right spot. That is pretty critical, because if you don't run that in the right spot, your fan may eat your wiring, and then your fan clutch won't be sending its electronic signal, won't be working properly. So make sure you do that. And then just plug that straight in again, fill your radiator back up again, get your coolant mix correct, make sure you're using the correct specification coolant. That's all in your workshop manual, and also in your service schedule and owner's manual in your glove box. Pretty simple, but that's how I would do it. If I was going to do this job again, what I would probably do if I keep this car to 500,000 kilometers, I will set a schedule where I'll just do this whole replacement again. So I never have to worry about, is my thermostat bung? Is my water pump bung? Is that belt going to snap somewhere along the way? Is the fan clutch nearly worn out? It really wasn't that big of expense. I think I was probably, at best $500 Australian in for parts. And to me, that's pretty cheap insurance for, tens of thousands, if not a couple 100,000 of trouble-free motoring as it relates to that cooling system at the front of the engine. And I know it's been done. There's no part of that system that I know that I have to worry about, when was that last done? It's done now. I know it's done. You shouldn't have the problem that I had trying to get that blasted fan clutch out. Nobody else I could see online in their videos had any problem after they cracked it. We had some difficulty. So first way I would do it is I would lean on the belt, have your 36mm spanner and try and tap it off just to crack it. That seemed to be what most people did. And then they resorted to the fan clutch removal tool. You could do what we did and skip that step and just go to tightening it down with a ratchet or something to put more tension on it and try and crack it that way. Anyway, that's what we did. The fan clutch removal tool in Australia is not super easy to find. We picked one up from Sydney Tools, which is just a parts reseller in Australia, but not a common item. So you maybe bake that into your cake if you're going to do this in Australia. Either try the ratchet method. Hopefully you can just crack it without worrying about that anyway. But worst case scenario, you might be either having to bring it in from overseas. You can find them on Amazon and eBay and such. or on part suppliers like Rock Auto if you're interested in doing it that way. But good little thing to think about if you own one of these trucks, if you're unsure how the cooling system has been serviced, might be worthwhile thinking doing a preemptive strike. And if I were you, I'd just do the whole system at once, because you don't want to do your water pump and then your fan clutch goes, or do your fan clutch and then your water pump goes, or your tensioner goes, or the belt snaps. If you do it as a scheduled service, you know that it's all done, so it's a good baseline, hopefully for you, to have some trouble-free motoring for a good time into the future. I hope this was useful for you. As with all my videos, take this with a grain of salt, do your own research, and this is only my personal opinion, but I do hope it was useful for you. Thank you for watching.